Well, good evening, everyone. It is my great pleasure to welcome you to tonight's program. We're going to learn about Manos, selections of Latin American art from the Des Moines Art Center's collection. And as I get started, I would like to introduce a very important person on this call. Her name is Aura Becerro, and she is serving as our Spanish language translator. This is the first time that we have done live translation. So Aura, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Aura has a strong background in museum and social work and a passion for developing and delivering educational programs. She has held positions with various organizations in Costa Rica and most recently in New York City. And we're tremendously grateful that she's here tonight. So now, I don't know, Aura, would you like to translate any of that?
Buenas noches. Yo se estaba refiriendo un poquito a mi educación, que he trabajado en Costa Rica, he trabajado más recientemente en museos en Nueva York, como el New York Historical Society, y estoy muy feliz de estar aquí.
And of course, I would also like to introduce Jared Ledesma. He is the former associate curator for art at the Des Moines Art Center. And this exhibition, Manos, which opened back in May, has been on view and it will be on view through the end of September.
Y con ustedes también tenemos al curador Jared Ledesma. Él va a estar hablando sobre todas las obras del día de hoy.
Jared worked at the Art Center for 3.5 years, and he stepped away this summer to take an incredible position as senior curator with the Akron Art Museum.
Jared trabajó en el Des Moines Art Center por 3 años y medio y ahora acaba de pasarse una nueva posición en otro museo en Ohio.
And the Akron Art Museum is a nearly 100-year-old institution that also focuses on modern and contemporary artwork. And we're really proud of Jared, although we miss him, for joining their leadership team.
Estamos muy orgullosos de la posición que ahora tiene Jared, ya que este es un museo también muy importante para la comunidad.
All right, Jared, I'm going to toss it over to you to begin tonight.
Thank you, Jill. So I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, so thank you, Jill, and it's a pleasure to be here and to see many people in Des Moines. It's bittersweet. Also just it's 6:30, like Jill said, it's a little later here, and I'm a little new to this space in the office, so I might have to shift my my camera around so I don't become dark as the sun sets. So bear with me.
Bueno, es un gusto estar aquí. Veo muchas personas conocidas y da un poquito, es un agridulce porque, bueno, es también extrañarlos. Y como son las 6:30 en el lugar donde me encuentro, voy a estar moviendo un poco la cámara para jugar con la iluminación.
So Manos was something that, I'm trying to remember when I thought of this show, maybe last year, and we were thinking about an exhibition to accompany Justin Favela's exhibition that's currently up in the main gallery at the Art Center. And we thought it would be great to bring together Latin American art from the Art Center's collection and showcase them in the print gallery.
Manos nace también como un acompañamiento a la colección actual en el museo que es por el artista Justin Favela de arte centroamericano. Entonces nos parece un buen complemento esta colección de Manos a la colección de Justin.
There we go. So the show's title is taken from a print by Jose Clemente Orozco titled Manos. And the exhibition is interesting in that it features work that spans about 100 years. But I noticed a lot of the work in the exhibition, or a lot of the artists are inspired by pre-Columbian art.
El nombre de esta exhibición, Manos, nace de esta impresión que vemos en este momento por el artista José Clemente Orozco. y es muy interesante también el origen de la misma.
But just going a little bit about Orozco and this work and him in particular. Oh, sorry, I'm still getting used to forwarding the slides here. Yeah. Orozco was, was raised in Mexico City, and is known for being part of Los Tres Grandes, the Mexican muralists that included Diego Rivera and Alfredo Siqueiros.
Hablando un poco del artista de José Clemente Orozco, es conocido como uno de los tres grandes muralistas, entre ellos también está Diego Rivera, y también deriva mucho su fama de estos tres artistas muralistas mexicanos.
But what was new to me, and I didn't realize this before, was that his left hand was amputated in an accident, due to an accident, in other words, that happened in 1904.
Lo que aprendí también sobre él es que él tuvo una amputación de su mano izquierda, por lo que también, es interesante saberlo para entender su obra.
So at this time, Orozco was studying architecture. He was an aspiring architect. The story goes that he was mixing chemicals to create fireworks to celebrate Mexico's independence that year, and there was an accidental explosion. Because of the result of the amputation, he decided to shift to studying visual art and creating drawings and paintings.
En el momento de que él sufrió este accidente, él también estaba estudiando arquitectura, y este accidente lo sufre ya que estaba celebrando la independencia de México, estaba preparando una mezcla de juegos artificiales como con fuego, y ahí fue cuando sufrió este accidente.
I think just knowing this and looking at these two works is really interesting because there's so much connected to hands. I talk about in the text is Orozco possibly thinking about labor and the labor force of Mexico in depicting hands. But also there's something really gentle about these two works. And the work on the left isn't in the exhibition, but it shows that he was interested in depicting hands and these features.
Y aquí podemos ver en estas dos imágenes, es muy interesante tomar en cuenta su labor también reflejando la clase obrera mexicana, pero al mismo tiempo estas obras, estos dibujos producen una sensación como muy calma, como muy delicada de la función también de esta parte.
There's another work by Orozco in the exhibition, Zapatistas, and this is a really interesting work. Orozco is known for for creating murals that criticized the Porfirio Diaz dictatorship, but he was also critical of the war itself and the fighting that took place.
Y aquí podemos ver en esta ilustración se llama Los Zapatistas. Él también era muy crítico del movimiento, la dictadura y todo lo que estaba ocurriendo en el país, y también refleja un poco ese aire como de crítica hacia la guerra.
So on the one hand, he was very sympathetic to the peasant class and the rebels that were fighting against the dictatorship, but he was also critical of the bloodshed that had occurred as a result of the war. And I think that's depicted here by the way he depicts the soldiers, the Zapatistas. They look puzzled, they look worried, en masse or together.
por un lado, él simpatizaba con esta acción de salir y protestar y de todo lo que estaba sucediendo. Sin embargo, al mismo tiempo tenía como esa dualidad de apoyar y al mismo tiempo sentirse molesto por la situación de guerra, las consecuencias que una guerra trae en sí.
This work is in the exhibition, a portrait of Orozco by Doris Ullman, who was an American photographer, 20th century photographer, who was new to me. I hadn't heard of her work before working on this exhibition.
Este portarretrato pertenece a una fotógrafa estadounidense, su nombre es Doris Ullman y ella fue quien tomó esta fotografía. Es primera vez que veo, bueno, o muy recientemente aprendí de la existencia de esta fotógrafa y este retrato de Orozco hace parte de la colección.
So in the late 1920s, Orozco was in the United States. He was creating murals in different sites here in the US. And while in New York, his work was being promoted by the gallerist Alma Reed, who was also Doris Ullman's gallerist.
Durante finales de los años 20, Orozco se encontraba en la ciudad de Nueva York, allí desarrollando muchas de sus obras y también hubo una galería que amiga de Doris, parte también de esta relación que tenían artística.
So the two most likely met through Alma Reed, and Doris Ullman, a suite of portraits of Orozco, and supposedly gifted many of them to him for a birthday party that she threw in his honor.
Muy probablemente Alma Reed, que es la persona de la galería, Doris y Orozco se conocían en aquel momento y como para celebrar el cumpleaños de Orozco en ese año se realiza este portarretrato.
Jean Charlot is no stranger to the Des Moines Art Center. We have an amazing mural by the artist in the education wing, but his work is also included in this exhibition. There are many works by Charlot in this show.
Jean Charlotte es muy conocida por la colección en el museo, en el Art Moines Art Center, y por eso mismo también hace parte la resaltamos con esta obra.
Charlot was French. He was born and raised in Paris, but his mother was Mexican. And he traveled with his mother to Mexico in the 1920s.
Charlotte era francés, sin embargo, la familia de su madre eran mexicanos, por lo tanto, en algún momento también durante los años 20 se traslada con su familia a México.
So while he was in Mexico, he worked as a draftsman on archaeological digs and excavations in the Yucatan at Chichen Itza.
Cuando estaba ya él en México, trabajaba como parte de expediciones arqueológicas en Yucatán y allí hacía dibujos de lo que iban encontrando de las expediciones. Y aquí podemos ver algunas de sus obras.
And he created many sketches after what he a lot of them, there are a few that are preserved in an archives at the University of Hawaii. So I encourage you to look at those. But what he saw, he translated into work like this. And how do I go back? There we go. And work that's in the exhibition where he, oh, sorry, Aura.
No, it's fine.
Okay.
Mientras estuvo en esas expediciones, hizo algunos dibujos de lo que iba encontrando, que era lo que podíamos ver en las imágenes anteriores, y recomiendo mucho la colección de Hawái, ya que hay muchos de estos dibujos que se rescataron de su creación.
So we see the characteristics of what he would have seen in these Mayan ruins, especially in relief sculptures on buildings. These drawings and these prints have characteristics of the sculptures as both being flat, but also three-dimensional as well.
Como podemos ver, se exhiben algunas características de lo que de lo que se fue encontrando en estas expediciones. Tiene un elemento como también como de varias dimensiones, como que parece ser como plano, pero al mismo tiempo tiene cierta dimensión en la imagen.
There's also what I think is interesting, this theme of motherhood that is in many of the works. And I'm not quite sure if this is because he was looking at fertility figures or mother figures in the Yucatan, but there's also that connection to his mother that I think is important to remember.
Es importante resaltar este vínculo maternal en su vida. Puede tener mucho que ver con que es por el lado de su madre que él se reconecta con México, que viaja a Yucatán, pero sí es un tema recurrente en sus obras, el tema de la maternidad.
Rufino Mayo is represented in the exhibition by a few works as well. He was born in Oaxaca, but his parents died when he was 12, and afterwards he moved to Mexico City to live with his aunt.
Rufino Mayo también le hacemos referencia en esta colección, también es mexicano. En algún momento también va a vivir con sus tías.
His aunt owned a fruit business, and he talks about how seeing her sell fruit, as well as growing up in Oaxaca and seeing the street merchants and people in the market selling food was inspired him to create the work that we're looking at here and other works of the early 1940s where he depicts women working in the markets or
Él mismo creciendo en Oaxaca, México, y viendo de su tía era entonces una imagen como muy común para él durante su vida, él ver a las mujeres en sus labores.
There are some definite similarities between the Mayo and Charlot. Mayo was also interested in pre-Columbian architecture and design. He actually worked as the of ethnographic drawings at the National Museum of Archaeology in Mexico City, which I think was extremely influential.
Aquí podemos ver alguna relación en los intereses de ambos artistas. En el caso de Tamayo, también había mucho interés por el arte precolombino, por este tema recurrente. Entonces, al parecer también tuvo vinculación con, what was the name of the center, Jerry?
The National Museum of Archaeology.
El Museo Nacional de México de Arqueología. Por lo tanto, sí hay una común.
This work is really interesting. De Mayo was inspired by modern art, European art, Picasso and Matisse.
Tamayo estaba muy interesado en el arte, por ejemplo, de Picasso y Matisse. Aquí vemos también un poco de esa influencia.
A lot of his work is compared to Picasso, but I think it's really interesting to look at this comparison as well. I don't think he was only looking at Picasso and Matisse. And I love similarities in the faces here as far as the mouths and the grin. They're both flat, and the horizon lines are similar as well.
Podemos ver, aunque se le vincula mucho con Picasso en sus obras, parece muy interesante esta similitud en la obra de John Dubuffet, ya que podemos ver algunas similitudes en las facciones, también como la línea del horizonte, y como más que todo en sus rostros.
Miguel Conde is Mexican American. He spent time in Paris working for a printmaking workshop there called the Atelier 17.
Miguel Conde es mexicano y estadounidense. Él vivió un tiempo en París y podemos ver también aquí que hizo parte de what was the name of this?
Studio 17.
Ajá, del estudio 17.
What I love about these works, and a lot of us at the Art Center had never seen these in person, is that they're hilarious. There's a lot of humor in these works. In the image on the left, if you see this in person, you can get up close. It looks like two people are sharing smoke, possibly from weed. I can say that because I no longer work at the Art Center, maybe. I don't but they're fantastic.
Si tuvieran la oportunidad de ver de cerca estas obras, se podrían apreciar más los detalles. Me parece que son como muy graciosos. Hay algunas partes en las que si se ve con detenimiento parece como que tal vez estuvieran como pasándose humo. Entre es muy curioso las escenas.
Conde says that a lot of these images are inspired by European paintings from the 15 and 1600s, and specifically these feasting scenes that were a popular subject at the time.
Al parecer también, sobre todo en estas escenas de comida, hay una referencia en los banquetes del siglo XV, XVI. Podemos ver como esa similitud, ese tema, no sé, como más de esa época de banquete.
But I think what Conde does so well is he adds modern updates to these scenes, not only by like the typewriters, but also updating them or transforming these figures. They're grisly looking and maybe kind of evoking what these feasting scenes were depicting of greed, hunger, or this plethora of food. And I think in a way that he's getting.
De alguna forma él actualiza este tipo de escenas, añadiendo elementos como por ejemplo la máquina de escribir, un poco más moderna. También hay algo como un aire un poquito grotesco, como que da a entender esa parte de exceso que se puede dar en eventos como estos.
This is a really beautiful drawing by Francisco Zuniga, who was born in Costa Rica in 1912. At the age of 13, he began working at his father's studio. His father worked as he carved religious sculptures for a living, and that greatly influenced Zuniga to become a sculptor himself.
Aquí podemos ver un dibujo muy hermoso de Francisco Zúñiga. Su padre tenía un taller de escultura, por lo tanto se puede pensar que mucha de su influencia para su arte tuvo que ver con esa experiencia de tener muy de cerca esa profesión.
Zuniga used many of his drawings as sketches as preparation for his sculptures. And I think that's really evident here in both the drawing on the right and also in the sculpture on the left.
Podemos ver en este caso la relación que hay entre su escultura y su dibujo o el bocetos. Parece ser que era una preparación de él. A través de sus dibujos se iba preparando para el momento de llegar a las esculturas y se puede suceder también en común.
Carlos Merida, similar to Tamayo, is recognized for his fusion of European modern art with culture.
Carlos Mérida tiene esa similitud con Tamayo en cómo integra un poquito el arte europeo con el arte latinoamericano en su trabajo.
When Mérida was 19, he moved to Paris, where he lived for 4 years and became involved in the circles in Paris and what was happening as far as European modernism.
Carlos Mérida se traslada a París, vive allí a los 19 años y vive allí 4 años, y en esos 4 años al parecer se logra vincular muchos círculos culturales en la ciudad.
Mérida was part Mayan. He had Mayan heritage in his blood, and he was really interested in his work.
También quería mostrar como parte de su herencia a través de su trabajo, de su línea de herencia.
So this work in particular was really interesting to research. I wrote a label for this work and saw completely one way. The title translates to an Arura, correct me if I'm wrong, grandfather Ixmucan, I believe.
I was looking earlier this name because it's from the Maya culture. Names, the pronunciation Ishmukane.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, like
Say that again.
Ishmuk.
Okay.
Grandfather. So it's
Okay.
like a Mayan term.
That was really fascinating to me when I was researching the work because butcher it, Ishmukane was a goddess or is a goddess in Mayan culture. And so what I was thinking that this image was depicting is this kind of celestial spirit.
Ishmukane es un dios en la cultura maya, entonces es muy importante que esta obra exhibe también ese espíritu como celestial, también como parte de la creación.
But then a friend of mine and also the amazing at the Art Center point a landscape.
Y un amigo y también personas dicen que un paisaje en esta creación.
And I think that's excuse me, the goddess of maize or corn. And for the Mayans, corn is this symbol of life, of energy, and of growth.
Lo cual es muy interesante, digamos, significado y el maíz.
So I think this it can go either way, and I'm really what you see in this work as well.
Sería interesante ver ustedes qué ven en esta obra.
So maybe save that for the Q&A or now. The Art Center also has this fantastic work on the right by Merida. I encourage you to go to the Art Center's website to find of artist Justin Favela talking about this, the work on the right, and how it inspired him for his current show.
Y la pintura que vemos a la derecha, Los Caminantes del Maya, también de Mérida, hace parte de la colección del museo. Y los invito a que revisen también en la página del museo, porque hay un video de Justin Favela, que es una de las exhibiciones de ahora, en la que se refiere a su inspiración con respecto a esto.
Rodolfo Abularac in Guatemala, and he moved to New York in 1958 to study at the Art Students League.
Rodolfo Abularac también se traslada a, what was the name of the institution that you mentioned?
The Art Students League.
La Art Students League también se traslada allí donde estudios. Sería una liga de estudiantes en Nueva York.
In 1964, he attended printmaking Pratt Institute, which is also in New York, and became really interested in printmaking.
Y durante los años 62 24 se enfoca mucho en el Pratt Institute, el Instituto Pratt queda en Nueva York también, y se interesa mucho en todo lo que tiene que ver con todo lo hacer estampado, printmaking.
And like the artists, similar to the artists I've mentioned, he too was interested in abstract art, surreal art that depicted fantastical pictures or dreamlike imagery.
Y tal como el artista que estábamos hablando, él está muy interesado en arte más abstracto, como imágenes, como un estado de sueño, como analizando todo este arte abstracto.
And it was during the 1960s when he became really interested in depicting eyes in particular. And I think it's fascinating qualities still keep this organic quality to them as well.
Menos comienza a enfocarse mucho en el desarrollo de dibujos o ilustraciones que tengan que ver con los ojos, y es muy interesante cómo mezcla esa parte abstracta, pero también como muy orgánico la aproximación al dibujo de los ojos.
Ana Mendieta is also no stranger to Iowa, and she was born in Cuba, but was forced to flee with her family college at the University of Iowa.
Ana Mendieta también es una artista muy conocida aquí por nosotros en Iowa. Hace parte de la colección. También ella desarrolla la Universidad Estatal de Iowa.
But I think what's interesting, and again, she, while she was attending the University of Iowa, she traveled to Colombian sites with her classmates who were also studying art at the time, and became inspired to really focus on pre-Columbian culture and heritage of Latin.
Estudiando aquí en la Universidad de Iowa, realizó junto con sus compañeros que estaban estudiando arte en México una visita a los precolombinos, y allí también entró como en exposición con toda esta parte de su origen, del arte latinoamericano, de todo el tema de, digamos, latinoamericano.
But unlike artists that I've mentioned previously that were interested in pre-Columbian culture and art, Dieta kind of returns to the earth and her body to the earth, and kind of creating this fusion between her body and the earth, and evoking this idea of returning to nature.
Su interés en arte como otros de los artistas que hemos visto, ella decide volver como a la tierra, con la tierra y con la naturaleza. Es algo interesante.
And I again encourage this show. Haven't, but of these photographs and that document her creating carvings in rock in Iowa, and to see them all together, it really shows her sustained interest in fusing the body and the earth.
Si tienen la oportunidad, los invito a que vayan a ver la acción que tenemos en el museo, ya que allí van a ver diferentes imágenes como estas en las que ella está de todas sus obras.
Graciela Iturbide is a contemporary Mexican photographer. She originally studied film, but became really in Henri Bresson as well as Tina Modotti.
Podemos ver aquí a Graciela, se dedica es más en la fotografía, y tuvo la influencia de principalmente de, what was the influencers, those two persons mentioned?
Henri Bresson and Tina Modotti.
Y ellos dos fueron los que más influenciaron su obra.
Really interested in depicting indigenous subjects in South America, especially women, and the roles that these women played in these cultures.
Ella se interesó especialmente en retratar a poblaciones indígenas de Centroamérica y de Sudamérica, en especial las mujeres, tratando de reflejar como más allá su realidad.
So in this photograph in particular, we're looking at a Seri woman, and that's S-E-R-I, of the Seri indigenous people in Sonora, in Mexico.
Y aquí vemos representado a una mujer que pertenece al pueblo indígena, a los pueblos indígenas Sari de México, y eso es lo que vemos aquí representado en esta fotografía en específico de Mujer Ángel.
And what I love about this photograph is that Iturbide is depicting multiple worlds or ways of living at once.
Y lo más me interesa y lo que más me parece interesante de Graciela Iturbide es que ella refleja múltiples mundos al mismo tiempo, como que refleja múltiples realidades en una sola imagen.
The woman, she is in traditional dress, and her hair is also in a traditional hairstyle. Yet she's holding a boombox, but she's also traveling through the desert on foot. So here we have technology and cultures clashing, or as I said earlier, these different worlds coming together in one image.
Aquí vemos a esta mujer con su ropa típica, con el cabello tal como lo suelen utilizar. Está caminando descalza por este terreno desértico y también vemos que tiene en su mano algo más tecnológico o más moderno, que es la grabadora. Entonces podemos ver como ese contraste entre diferentes mundos.
I had a quote where Iterbide talks about this picture in particular.
Vamos a hablar de una reflexión, unas palabras de la propia artista Graciela con respecto a esta imagen.
And she says, quote, I took the picture, there was the music from her cassette.
Cuando tomé la foto estaba escuchando música del cassette.
Her hair was all tangled up and it seemed as though she was flying.
Su cabello estaba todo enredado, moviéndose y parecía como si ella estuviera volando.
This is the only sculpture in the exhibition by Teresa Margaries, who lives and works in Mexico City.
Esta es la única obra que tenemos de Teresa Margaries, que vive en México y trabaja en México, en la Ciudad de México.
She is interested in traces of life and the way that disaster or violence disrupts human life or alters our way of living.
Ella le interesa mucho como esos rastros de vida y la forma en la que un desastre o un evento violento causa como una ruptura en la vida humana de las personas, a la experiencia que tenemos como humanos.
This work in particular is in reference to the 2008 Sichuan earthquake that was in China that killed 87,000 people and 18,000 people were missing.
Este pedacito que vemos aquí es en referencia a un experimento en China, que alrededor de 87,000 personas murieron y 18,000 personas desaparecidas. Esto ocurrió en Sichuan, China.
Margolles was in at the time on an artist residency and experienced the earthquake herself. And the object is composed of wood from a house that was destroyed by the earthquake.
Ella se encontraba en China en una experiencia educativa de arte y experimentó ella misma este desastre y ese pedacito de estructura pertenece a una casa que fue destruida como resultado del terremoto.
It's been kind of frozen in time by 18 karat gold. It becomes, this piece of wood then becomes in a way a relic.
Y está sostenida por una pirámide de 18 quilates de oro y eso por lo que lo hace ver o le da esa impresión.
And it's been talked about then in this way, there's this relationship to what's called the true cross in Christianity, which is reference to the wood of the cross on which Jesus Christ was crucified.
Se llama la cruz. Jesucristo, entonces hay un paralelo también con ese pedazo de madera.
I just want to be sure that you were kind of breaking up, Aura, so I just want to be sure that, am I okay? Can you hear and see me okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So that's it for Manos. Now we're shifting to Alfredo Ramos Martinez.
Y eso era todo lo que pertenece a la colección de Manos, y ahora vamos a cambiar de tema para hablar de otro artista que su nombre es Alfredo Ramos Martínez.
So this is a work that was recently acquired by the Des Moines Arts Center.
Fue adquirido recientemente.
And so Alfredo Ramos Martinez was born in Monterey in the late 1800s, I believe in the 1880s.
Nace en Monterrey finales de los años 80.
And he moved to Mexico City to study.
Y se mueve a la Ciudad de México.
And even as a young art student, it's a little better. And even as a young art student, he became disgruntled with the academic way of studying art from plaster casts.
Y cuando estaba estudiando arte se encontró como sorprendido de la forma en la forma como académica en la que se enseñaba arte.
He was able to go to Paris, and it was funded by, and I'm forgetting now, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting, Aurora. Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
Okay, también sorry, I thought I was remembering the name. Él se mueve a París y también a continuar sus estudios.
Thank you for bearing with me. I'm forgetting the name of this patron, but it's a well-known patron. I'm sorry, but she saw his work in Mexico City. She saw his art, his student work, and funded and gave him money to travel to Paris and spend time in France to study art.
Hubo un patrocinador que ahora no recuerdo el nombre, que hizo parte de, como que le patrocinó, ya que vio su Ciudad de México, y le patrocina este viaje a París, motivado por su obra.
And while he was there, he became fascinated with working outside from the outdoors or in the outdoors and depicting reality or what they saw outside.
Y le llamó mucho la atención los artistas que retrataban el mundo exterior, como lo veían ocurriendo en el exterior.
He brought that experience back to Mexico City with him, where he became the director of an art school there.
Y todas esas experiencias las llevó a México, donde se convirtió en el director de una academia de arte.
His students to create artwork, to go outside and create artwork, and to depict what they saw outside or in the streets of Mexico City as well.
Invitaba mucho a sus estudiantes a que fueran a la ciudad y que retrataran todo lo que veían allí afuera.
And this is an early picture by Martinez that he was in Paris.
Una de sus obras recientes que creó cuando estaba, la que estamos viendo.
Martinez, his daughter suffered from a bone disease, and in order to give her treatment, he moved his family from Mexico City to Los Angeles in 1929.
Es la hija del artista Alfredo Ramos, también tenía una enfermedad relacionada con los huesos, y entonces por esta razón se van a Los Ángeles en busca de un tratamiento. Eso fue en el año 1929.
Moved to LA, he kind of had this aha moment where he combined his interest in European art with this longing for Mexico and pre-Columbian heritage and culture.
Ujú. Y tiene ese momento como de descubrimiento en el que él descubre que puede combinarse en el arte europeo con su arte más propio, que es como el arte mexicano y su cultura latinoamericana precolombina.
And also his interest in depicting.
Y también descubre como ese en mostrar, reflejar las personas del día en México, personas realizando sus ocupaciones.
And because of this, he's considered the founding father of what's called Mexican modernism.
Y se considera el padre fundador de lo que se considera como el modernismo mexicano.
And you can see in our picture, the Des Moines Art Center's picture on the right, and on the painting on the left, we see his interest, especially in Cubism, and how Cubism, applying this idea of breaking up the picture into quadrants or sections or forms, but also maintaining or sustaining his interest in pre-Columbian art, the way that the figures have been depicted, especially their faces.
Uh-huh. Podemos ver en estas dos imágenes su interés en el cubismo, cómo divide las escenas, la forma en la que él hace como el establecimiento de los rostros. Tiene mucha influencia del cubismo en estas imágenes.
And I think I'm going to stop there, just for matters of time.
All right, this is Jill chiming in. I have continued to have a little bit of trouble with my internet connection, so I have asked my colleague Mia Boo to run the Q&A portion of the night. So Mia is on, and I'm going to unpin the spotlight from Jared and Aura, and we're happy to hear your questions. Thank you very much, Jared. That was wonderful. So many of these paintings, the contextual works of art that you've shown us, I'm in love with. This painting right now by Martinez is stunning.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Jill. I'm Mia Boo, museum educator, and I'm happy to facilitate the Q&A. So if anyone has any questions, feel free just to toss those in the chat and I'd be happy to share them. Otherwise, like Jill said, Jared, too, if you want to unshare your screen so we can see everybody. Yeah. You're welcome to raise your hand or just unmute yourself. And Jared would be happy to take any questions you guys might have.
Oops.
Although my sound is very intermittent when I hear, Jared, I do wonder if you can talk about, you were really instrumental in getting this work by Martinez acquired by the Art Center. Can you talk a little bit about how you came across that work and what it meant to you to have that piece in the collection before you left?
Yeah, definitely. It was something that both Laura and myself, we talked about, and Jeff, in an early 20th century work, American artist that was really important for the Art Center and its collection. Oh, I wasn't sure if Aura is still trans.
Estábamos preguntándole a Jared, que es el curador del Museo de Moines Art Center. Ahora está en otro museo. Sin embargo, le está preguntando Jill cuál fue su rol, por qué se les ocurrió esta colección, y dice que para ellos fue muy importante, para el equipo de trabajo, resaltar ese arte latinoamericano.
So I found Martinez just by researching Mexican modern art, and contacted the gallery that represents his estate, which is Lewis Stern Fine Arts in Los Angeles.
Y tuve interés por las obras de Martínez, encontré la institución que se encarga de sus obras en Los Ángeles, What was the name of the institution, Jared? Sorry.
It's Lewis Stern Fine Arts.
Lewis Stern Fine Arts en Los Ángeles, y así fue como inició este contacto.
And they sent me a checklist of works that were available, and there were quite a few that we were interested in, but it was that one work in particular that we all agreed was incredibly striking.
Había muchas obras que nos llamaron la atención, pero había una en particular que vimos como que era muy interesante.
And I think also it was important, we all agreed it was important that the image depict indigenous people or Mexicans in particular, that it was more figurative as opposed to abstract.
Y estábamos de acuerdo en que queríamos reflejar que fuera una figura más mexicana, que fuera más de nativos, de pueblos indígenas, más allá de algo abstracto en medio del arte moderno.
Thank you, Jared. We've got a question in the chat. So this comes from Uriel. She wants to know where some of the Orozco murals are in the US and if there are any in the Midwest.
So I know he was in, I feel like there's a mural in Pomona, at Pomona College. And I know that he was in New Hampshire in the late 1920s working on a mural, and also in New York. So I think it was LA, like greater LA region, New Hampshire, and New York. There might be more.
Estaban preguntando si hay algún mural en el, y más que todo en Los Ángeles, New York.
In New Hampshire.
New Hampshire.
And Jared, it's Jill again. When I was looking at the image on the PowerPoint tonight, the coffee cup or what I'm assuming, what I'm interpreting as a coffee cup in the hand of the brother, jumped out at me a little bit more today. What do you make of that?
I'm looking at it now. Maybe can I share again?
Yeah.
Oh, hold on. Now I have to find Zoom. There you are. Oops. There we go. So there it is. I'm not sure. I maybe it's a reference to, I don't know, a certain like custom of drinking, or no, I'm not quite sure. That's an interesting observation. I hadn't even noticed that.
And I wonder if there are folks on the call. Sorry, Aura, go ahead.
Oh, no, just a little bit. Esta pregunta se la hace Gila Jared relacionada con qué puede ser lo que las que están sosteniendo, y Jared está tratando de analizar qué puede ser a lo que hace alusión.
And what I was going to add is maybe there are guests who are here who have an idea and want to share with their interpretations of that. If you even think it's a cup, I was looking at it, I was like, doesn't really look like a piece of bread. Maybe you have ideas about what that is.
I have an idea. It's Mariella. Jill?
Yes, go ahead. Or Aura, do you want to interpret or translate there?
Yeah, I would. I was wondering if it's pre-Columbian, if it is chocolate, the chocolate drink.
Mariela está haciendo alusión a que tal vez, como es precolombino, tal vez es chocolate, una bebida de chocolate.
I think that's a great guess.
Yeah.
That's excellent.
It's a guess.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We have another question in the chat. 2 images were from the Guggenheim suite. What does that reference?
Let's go back. Sorry for
No, we're working together.
Was that was the Miguel Conde? There we go. So he was granted a Guggenheim. Conde was given a Guggenheim Fellowship, and I believe the proper name of the fellowship is the Guggenheim Fellowship for Latin American Art, where he created these works in Spain.
Se hace una pregunta sobre a qué hace referencia este Guggenheim Suite y es porque al parecer, bueno, Miguel Conde tuvo unos años de residencia o de estudio en el Guggenheim al referente a estudios latinoamericanos.
Thank you.
Jared, I have another question. It's Mariella again. Would the Latin American artists, the modernists, would they have been considered regionalists or international artists in the modernist world?
That's a really that's a good question. I think I don't think they would be considered regionalists because of that fusion of modern European modern art. However, there was a great show that was up last year or maybe the year before called Vida Americana at the Whitney that was looking at Latin American modernists and how they influenced American modernists.
Una pregunta de la participante Mariela sobre si en el mundo del arte moderno los artistas se consideran regionales o internacionales y en este caso dice que bueno, que es un debate interesante, que no cree que se consideren regionales. En el Whitney, en el Museo de Nueva York, hubo una exhibición que se llamaba Americana, Vida Americana.
Yep.
Y se hacía como referencia a cómo el arte americano influencia también el arte estadounidense.
That's a great question because I'm thinking of Grant Wood, where he was influenced by Flemish painting, but his I'm not sure.
So we've got another question. They asked, would you talk more about ghoulishness in Conde's work?
Sure. I think I really, when I was connecting it, there we go, to this painting in particular, there is this ghoulishness or this, I feel like it's like caricature. What he's getting at here, especially it's a lot easier to see that in this having the images side by side, this kind of caricature of behavior in these paintings, but also pieces are weird looking in the Dutch painting on the left, and he's emphasizing that as well.
Thank you.
Una pregunta sobre como el aspecto fastidioso, tal vez podría ser la palabra, de como a lo que deja la impresión de estas obras, y él habla un poco al respecto, como se puede ver las diferencias con esta otra pintura que es más como holandesa, y la de él sí se nota un poco más como que él deja ese...
The commenter responded, "Thank you. Caricature is a great word for what I'm seeing." Another question is, it sounds like many of the artists mentioned were formally trained. Could you mention which ones were self-taught? Thank you.
Oh, so I'm going back to my notes. I don't know. There was one. And I'm forgetting which one. Sorry, I'm forgetting which artist was self-taught. Sorry, I could get back to you on that.
Una pregunta que hace referencia a que parece ser que todos los artistas son muy entrenados como formalmente, que si había alguno que era como autodidacta. Y todavía no estamos, va a regresar con esa información Jared para confirmar cuál.
They responded, the artist that worked with his father.
Oh, Zuniga, he was not self-taught.
Zuniga estaban tal vez pensando que podría ser, pero él no, él sí recibió formación.
Or maybe he was. Sorry, I don't have that in my notes. I do have that he taught for over 3 decades at the National Institute of Fine Arts in Mexico City.
No estaba muy seguro si tal vez sí fue autodidacta, como que no queda muy claro por las notas que se tiene.
Oh, let me stop sharing here.
Well, Jared, I think that we've come to that time where the questions have kind of stopped flowing in, unless Mia is seeing something that's just slow to pop up on my chat.
Nope.
No, okay. Well, everyone, if you'd like to join me, I would encourage you to thank Jared for putting time into visiting us again from Akron, and Aura for her tremendous skills tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jared.
Thank you all. Nice, Laura. Hi, Laura. It's nice seeing you.
Miss you, Jared.
Oh, miss all of you too.
You.
Come to Akron. Laura,
Yes.
come to Akron. Okay.
Yes, we can't wait to see what your.
I'd be happy to anywhere at this point. So yes, I will come back.
Thanks for all you taught us.
Oh.
Have a good night, everybody. Thank you.